Emotional unavailability is one of the most misread patterns in dating because it can look like so many different things. It can look like mystery. It can look like independence. It can look like being busy, guarded, slow to open up, not good with feelings, not ready, not sure, needing space, moving carefully. And the reason it traps people is because it often comes with just enough warmth to keep you invested, but not enough consistency to make you feel safe. So you keep trying to earn what should be freely given. You keep trying to unlock someone who keeps choosing a locked door. And the most dangerous part is that the chase starts to feel like love. In this episode, we're going to break emotional unavailability down as a psychological system, not a personality label, so you can see exactly why avoidant patterns pull back, why anxious patterns attach, why the bond gets so sticky, and what changes the outcome without becoming cold or performative. Because once you can see the mechanism, you stop taking it personally, and you stop confusing access with intimacy. Let's define emotional unavailability in the cleanest way. Emotional unavailability is when someone can experience connection but cannot sustain emotional continuity. They can be present in moments, but they don't carry you between moments. They can have chemistry, but they can't build a stable emotional rhythm. They can enjoy you, but they struggle with depth that requires responsibility. And you feel that difference in one place more than anywhere else. You feel it after closeness. You feel it when the moment passes and you need the relationship to still exist. That is where emotional unavailability shows itself, because it is less about what they feel in a moment and more about what they can hold across time. Now, there are many reasons someone becomes emotionally unavailable, but the pattern tends to land in one of two nervous system strategies: the avoidant strategy and the anxious strategy. Avoidant does not mean they do not feel. Avoidant means they regulate threat by creating distance. They regulate discomfort by reducing closeness. They regulate pressure by restoring autonomy. Anxious does not mean weak. Anxious means they regulate threat by creating proximity. They regulate discomfort by increasing contact. They regulate uncertainty by seeking reassurance. Put those two strategies together, and you get the most common modern relationship trap. One person's safety is closeness. The other person's safety is space. So the exact move that calms one person activates the other. And then both people start acting from protection instead of choice. Here is how emotionally unavailable behavior actually gets created in the avoidant system. Emotional availability requires three things most people underestimate: tolerance for vulnerability, tolerance for emotional responsibility, and tolerance for repair. Vulnerability means being seen and staying. Responsibility means understanding that closeness creates expectation and choosing to meet it instead of running from it. Repair means when something breaks, you return and fix, instead of disappearing and resetting. Avoidant systems often struggle with one or more of these, not because they are bad, but because their nervous system reads these as danger. Being needed can feel like being trapped. Being seen can feel like being judged. Repair can feel like admitting weakness. So they keep connection in a zone that feels safe to them. They can be warm, charming, even intense sometimes, but they keep the relationship in a shape where they remain in control of emotional exposure. They give you enough to stay interested, but they avoid the part that makes the relationship real. The part that makes it real is consistency when there is nothing exciting happening. The part that makes it real is showing up after the moment, not only during it. And that is why anxious attachment gets hooked so hard. Because anxious attachment is wired to treat emotional inconsistency as a problem to solve. Anxious systems don't just want connection, they want continuity. They want the bond to be stable enough that they can relax. So when they meet someone emotionally unavailable, the nervous system does something subtle and brutal. It starts working for love. It starts treating love like a transaction. If I can be more understanding, they will open up. If I can be calmer, they will stay. If I can prove I'm safe, they will choose me. And that turns the relationship into a job. Not a partnership, a job. And the paycheck is occasional warmth. Now, the reason the job becomes addictive is because the reward is inconsistent. Inconsistent rewards are the strongest way to create obsession. The brain becomes more focused when the reward is unpredictable. You start thinking about them more, checking more, interpreting more, hoping more, because your brain thinks the right move will stabilize the bond. But emotional unavailability is not stabilized by the right move from you. It is stabilized only when the other person develops capacity. And that is the turning point. Many people stay stuck because they confuse capacity with chemistry. Chemistry is not capacity. Warmth is not capacity. Missing you is not capacity. Even empathy is not capacity. Capacity looks like behavior that repeats when the relationship is calm, not only when it is intense. Capacity looks like consistency, initiative, and repair. So let's make this extremely concrete with the signs that emotionally unavailable people can feel like they are doing a lot while still giving you very little. One sign is intermittent intimacy. They can be emotionally deep at night, or in bursts, or when they feel lonely, and then disappear or go cold when the relationship requires daytime continuity. Another sign is proximity without consequence. They want access without accountability. They want the comfort of your attention without the weight of a relationship structure. Another sign is future fog. Everything is vague. You never know where you stand. They keep the relationship in a gray zone because gray zones give them freedom. Another sign is repair avoidance. When conflict happens, or when they hurt you, they don't repair cleanly. They minimize, they deflect, they disappear, they reset. They may come back sweet, but sweetness without repair is not safety. It is a reset button. Another sign is selective availability. They are available when it suits their nervous system and unavailable when it doesn't. That creates a hierarchy where your needs become optional. And the anxious system hates optional love. It will work harder to make itself non-optional. That is the chase. Now, why does the anxious chase specifically? Because anxious attachment tends to have one deep belief running underneath it. If I am not chosen consistently, I will be abandoned. That belief can come from past experiences, family dynamics, previous relationships, or simply repeated exposure to inconsistent people. So, when an emotionally unavailable person pulls away, your nervous system doesn't interpret it as a preference. It interprets it as danger. And danger creates urgency. Urgency creates texting, explaining, analyzing, checking, overgiving, proving, performing, sometimes even collapsing or going cold to regain control. And emotionally unavailable people often respond to urgency by creating more distance, because urgency feels like pressure. Now you have the perfect storm. The more you chase, the more they withdraw. The more they withdraw, the more you chase. And both people become more convinced of their story. The anxious story is, I need to try harder or I'll lose them. The avoidant story is, closeness turns into demand, so I need space. That loop can go on for months or years because it provides both people with something. The anxious gets moments of connection that feel like relief. The avoidant gets moments of freedom that feel like safety. Neither is getting stable love, but both are getting regulation. And regulation can feel like love when you're starved. So, what is the leverage? The leverage is understanding that emotional unavailability is maintained by what you reward. If you reward inconsistency with full access, you train inconsistency to continue. If you reward vague returns with deep intimacy, you train vague returns to stay vague. If you reward silence with chasing, you train silence to remain a strategy. This is not about punishing anyone. It is about aligning access with behavior. People don't repeat patterns because they are evil. They repeat patterns because the patterns work. So you have to stop making the pattern work. Now, there is a moment that changes everything, and it is the moment most people miss. It is the moment right after closeness, right after intimacy, right after a deep conversation, right after a great date, right after a breakthrough. That is when emotionally unavailable people often pull back. They feel exposed. They feel like the relationship just increased in stakes. They feel like they might be expected to sustain that level of closeness, so they regulate by creating distance. The anxious system sees that distance and panics. It tries to secure the bond immediately, and that is where anxious people accidentally teach the other person that distance controls them. Because if distance makes you chase, distance becomes power. So the exit is simple, but not easy. You stop responding to distance with intensity. You respond with structure. Structure means you don't flood the gap. You don't keep trying to negotiate the relationship while your nervous system is activated. You let the moment settle. Then you require behavior. And requiring behavior doesn't mean demanding. It means you stop giving full access without continuity. You become warm but not available on demand. You become kind but not easy. You stop doing relationship labor for someone who is showing you limited capacity. Let's talk about the phrase that reveals emotional unavailability instantly. They say, "I'm not good at this. I'm not ready. I'm overwhelmed. I don't like pressure. I need space. I'm busy." Those phrases can be honest. The problem is what happens next. If you accept those phrases as an excuse to lower your standards indefinitely, you are agreeing to an arrangement where your needs become secondary. The correct way to hear those phrases is not as a promise or a rejection. It is as information about capacity. And capacity is the thing you must base your choices on. Not the vibe, not the chemistry, not the potential. Capacity. So how do you respond in a way that stops the chase without becoming cold? You do it through pacing and clarity. Pacing means you don't escalate intimacy faster than their consistency. You match their sustained behavior, not their momentary intensity. Clarity means you say what you want in a clean way and you don't negotiate against yourself. One calm line can do more than 10 emotional conversations. Something like, "I like consistency, and I build slowly with people who show it." Then you watch. Watching is not passive. Watching is how you protect your life. If they step into consistency, you engage more. If they don't, you step back. That's it. Now, the anxious fear will show up right here. It will say, "If I step back, I will lose them." Here is the clean truth. If stepping back makes you lose them, what you were holding was not stability. It was access based on your overfunctioning. You can hold a person for a long time, but you cannot feel loved while you are holding them. Love requires a free yes. Emotional unavailability often creates relationships where you are doing the choosing for both of you. You choose them, and then you keep choosing for them by staying available, staying patient, staying understanding, staying open, even when the behavior is inconsistent. but a relationship needs 2 yeses. If you have to keep manufacturing the yes, you will never feel safe. Now, what about the avoidant who does care but cannot sustain? This is where most people get trapped in compassion. Compassion is good. Compassion says, I understand why they struggle. Compliance is the trap. Compliance says, I will accept a destabilizing pattern because I understand it. Understanding someone does not mean you live inside their pattern. You can understand emotional unavailability and still require emotional availability if you want a relationship. You can have empathy without reducing yourself. And the most mature thing you can do for an avoidant is to stop feeding the pattern that keeps them underdeveloped. If there is always a partner who will accept half effort, there is no reason to grow. Growth happens when the environment requires it. So your standards are not cruelty. Your standards are clarity. Now, I want to give you a map of emotional availability so you stop being fooled by occasional warmth. Emotional availability has 3 visible behaviors. 1 is consistency, not constant contact, but predictable rhythm. 2 is initiative. They reach out without you dragging the relationship forward. 3 is repair. When something breaks, they return and fix. They don't disappear and reset. If any of those 3 are missing for a long time, you are not in a stable bond. You are in a hope loop. And hope loops feel romantic until you realize they're stealing your nervous system. Your life becomes a waiting room. You become someone who's always preparing to be chosen. That is not love. That is suspense. And suspense is not a relationship. So, what do you do if you recognize yourself in this title and you feel that sting of, it's me? You do 2 things. You stop negotiating with crumbs, and you stop making their unavailability your project. You can be warm. You can be open. You can even care deeply, but you stop paying for access with anxiety. You align your energy with behavior. You reward steadiness. You stop rewarding vague returns. You pace intimacy. You require repair. You don't become colder, you become steadier. And steadiness is the one thing emotional unavailability cannot survive unless it evolves. Welcome to PsychBond. You're safe here.